Significant historic shots coming in from the G7 summit. Those are the latest visuals that we are bringing to you of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi meeting the Ukrainian President Zelensky for the very first time ever since the war broke out in Ukraine. As we all know, this is a historic meet. President Zelensky of Ukraine has been trying to drum up support from neutral nations. Yesterday, he was at the Arab summit that was taking place in Saudi Arabia. Remember, several of the Arab nations have also remained neutral. How he manages to steer that meet with the Indian Prime Minister, because remember, India at this time is also being pressurized by Ukraine's Western allies to stop purchasing oil from Russia. Let's quickly take in our political editor, Mara Shakil, who is in fact covering the entire summit for us from Hiroshima. Mara, historic image of the Prime Minister's firm handshake with the Ukrainian president. A lot rests upon this meet. What should we now expect from the agenda in the time of war?
Yes, certainly. I mean, this is the first in-person interaction between the two leaders since the Russia-Ukraine conflict began in February 2022. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Zelensky had met in Glasgow on the sidelines of COP26 meeting in 2021. They had, got on the phone multiple times during the entire situation in Ukraine. Particularly when at that time when India was trying to really evacuate its students. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has so far maintained it very clearly that India stands on the side of peace and will remain firmly on that side. And even during the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, that is the SCO summit in Samarkand, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi had communicated to Vladimir Putin that this is not an era of war. And the concerns that India has is particularly about the challenges that people are facing with regards to the rising cost of food, fuel and fertilizers. And this is the time for cooperation and collaboration rather than a conflict is the message that has come from India. But India had not bagged the decisions that were taken, the resolutions that were moved at the United Nations, because it certainly understood of its long ties with Russia, and at the same time, it understands the domestic needs that India has. So finally, I think this imagery that we are seeing on our television screen is certainly very historic because Zelensky's visit was kept under the wraps till the last minute. In fact, Akanksha, President Zelensky landed in Hiroshima just a couple of hours back. And I would say this is his first bilateral meeting with any world leader, with interacting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi directly, because he understands fully well that the leverage that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has over his Russian counterpart. What are President Zelensky's expectations of India? Is he expecting that in this times of war, India should be standing strongly with Ukraine and condemning Russia? Well, India's stand has been very, very tightrope walk. But if you look at those visuals that have come in, the presence of National Security Advisor also becomes particularly crucial because of what happened only recently, Akanksha, when we were told, the allegations that had come from the Russian side that there was an attempt to kill Vladimir Putin. So when we look at these imagery, historic one certainly of that interaction that is taking place between Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and it is the Prime Minister's office Twitter handle which has officially put out that tweet.
Absolutely, Maria. And in fact, this is going to be a diplomatic tightrope walk for India, because remember, this meet is happening at a time when Western critics feel that India's rising trade with or the trade dealings with Russia are sort of undermining the global sanctions against Moscow over Ukraine's invasion.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there is a tightrope walk, and India, though, has managed to communicate to the world as to why India has taken this line. If you look at it, be it to the Quad nations or other nations, be it at the SCO, the presidency of which is with India, and the challenges that India has communicated even during the G20, because there have been these concerns that bilateral relationship between two countries and the tensions that are there, the Western powers are firmly condemning Russia, and they're standing with Ukraine. There have been multiple sanctions that have been imposed against, Ukraine, even at G7 summit. If the presence of Zelensky becomes even more important here, because this would be his first in-person visit for a summit of this nature, particularly when ever since the war began. And for him to have sought a meeting with the Prime Minister and Prime Minister Narendra Modi agreeing to that certainly is high on optics, but at the same time, it also is a reflection of what Ukraine thinks and how important it is for Ukraine to get India on its side.
Right.
And if you remember, Akansha, that Ukraine's first deputy foreign minister had visited in New Delhi in April, and she had urged India to balance relationship by reaching out to Ukraine. Is this that reach out that we were looking at? Perhaps an official press release by the Prime Minister's office will give us more clarity as to what really transpired in that meeting that took place earlier today.
Right. On that note, let me also bring in our international news correspondent, Abhishek Jha, who's also on the phone line with us. Abhishek, let's throw light on the diplomatic strategy that is being endorsed by the Ukrainian president. As I was also mentioning earlier, that yesterday we saw him at a very significant summit of the Arabs in Saudi Arabia. We do know that he's also gone on to say that Arabs... All right, Maria, let me take this question from you because we've lost Abhishek. But we heard Zelensky being very vocal about how Arabs have chosen to be silent as far as this entire war is concerned. At the same time, we've seen the Chinese envoy kick-starting that peace process that was, in fact, being floated by Xi Jinping and Zelensky. And today we see this meet between the Indian Prime Minister and the Ukrainian President. Is now the Indian Prime Minister that last link in the chain that President Zelensky wants to get on his side?
Yes, but the larger question is that there are a number of countries which are not the Western nations who are not standing with, Russia. Or standing with Ukraine. They have chosen to take a non-aligned position in this ongoing war because they understand that they have other considerations at hand. In an era of multilateralism where India is part of multiple groupings, India has managed to communicate, be it to the Quad countries or to other groups that India is part of, as to why it has taken a position which is being lauded now by the world because of its considerations that are very, very different. The Arab nations, yes, have again taken not a stand for Ukraine, and this visit of Zelensky to Arab countries and participating in that summit, he was hoping that he will get some kind of overwhelming support of the Arab countries in perhaps going ahead with sanctions against Russia and also standing with the West. But that is not to be, because we are seeing a visible shift in the stand also in some European countries, including Germany, because they realize that there are, because of this ongoing war, the prices of food and fuel is escalating. They have challenges with regards to the domestic economy as well. So while we look at these images, yes, West has been standing firmly with Ukraine since 1962, I would say, and they have been going in for multiple sanctions, providing multiple support for Ukraine, be it in the form of economic and human rights concerns, energy security, health, whatever you may call it. But 1986 is when the first communique happened between G7 and Ukraine, and there have been commitments at multiple levels, commitments continuing for decades, and G7 in particular post this aggression which started by Russia, which Russia says it's a military defense by the Russians. We have seen how there has been a position by the West in which they have said very clearly that they stand with them. But India, for understanding clearly that it cannot take a line which will be on either side.
Right, Maria, thank you for bringing in those details.